Why should we give land to the Indians when it clearly says on the paper it belongs to the farmers?
But surely you must realize that this is their home. These indigenous tribes have been living on this land for hundreds of years.
Listen, this world is not fair. Some people win, some people lose. The whole world think they can tell Brazil what to do with her land. Sorry, no. We do what we please.
Notre terre. Elle est en mouvement perpétuel. Toutes ses forces travaillent en synergie pour insuffler la vie à sa surface. Depuis des millénaires, on l'appelle aussi terre nourricière ou mère nature.
We live on an incredibly beautiful planet. A home that we will hopefully pass on to generations to come. But as the years go by, it's becoming increasingly hard to imagine what kind of a world we're leaving behind us. We've spent the last 4 years traveling around the world, filming the stark reality that people now face from the threat of ecological collapse. It's now become very clear to us that there's one thing driving the destruction of our ecosystems faster than anything else. Let us show you how this very same thing might just also be our salvation.
Climate and environmental scientists warn that we are fast approaching the point of no return if we don't make a substantial course reversal.
We see really serious catastrophic effects in the next few years, certainly in the next decade or two. The world will be completely different from the way it is now.
Depuis le début du XXe siècle, les bouleversements climatiques s'enchaînent et le rythme s'accélère. Ces 50 dernières années, on a recensé 4 fois plus de catastrophes climatiques qu'au cours des 100 années précédentes.
We began to work together to move this issue onto the global center stage. There was a lot of discussion about the contribution from buildings and from industrial factories, but I became aware during that same period of time that there was another factor that was going undiscussed, and that is the role of animal agriculture, which I could see was playing some significant role around the planet. But this was the elephant in the room no one wanted to talk about.
Whatever environmental issue you want to look at, from species loss to water pollution to water use to climate change, animal agriculture is one of the top causes.
The critical, widespread negative impact of animal agriculture on our planet is undeniable. Severe global crises, from climate change and environmental damage to species extinction, hunger, poverty, disease, and antibiotic resistance, all of these have direct connections to animal agriculture and the massive inefficiency of our current food production systems.
Wikileaks a révélé des échanges confidentiels entre Nestlé, le géant mondial de l'agroalimentaire, et des officiels américains. Dans ce document daté de 2009, Nestlé fait part de ses inquiétudes. Ses recherches ont montré que d'ici 30 ans, il n'y aura plus suffisamment d'eau douce sur la planète. Pourquoi ? En raison notamment de la production massive de viande, qui nécessite énormément d'eau.
If you look at the impact that food choice has on global warming, it's very significant. Eating meat is huge for global climate, and that's something where personal choice is the determining factor. So there's the only case I can think of where individual human choice would have a big effect, would be food.
We're now over the line. And the idea that we're going to double meat production between now and 2050, this is just unsustainable. This is going to have to give. Our diet is taking us to an abyss.
A significant reason why livestock production has been having such a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions is because of the large surfaces of forests that have been destroyed in order to make room for pastures and for the growth of soybean and maize for feedstock production.
Nos forêts étaient autrefois pleines de vie. Mais à cause de notre appétit insatiable de viande et de produits laitiers, nous avons eu besoin de plus en plus de terre. Alors nous avons abattu et brûlé des arbres pour faire de la place et élever du bétail. Des forêts entières décimées. Mais on ne s'est pas arrêté là. Nous avons aussi enfermé des millions d'animaux dans les élevages intensifs. Et bien sûr, il fallait aussi les nourrir. Alors une fois de plus, on a défriché des territoires entiers pour y semer du maïs et du soja génétiquement modifiés. On a arrosé le tout de pesticides, d'herbicides et d'engrais chimiques. L'élevage a littéralement modifié l'aspect de notre planète. Ici en vert, ce sont les cultures destinées à l'alimentation humaine, qui s'étendent dans le monde entier. Et maintenant, en rouge, voici les surfaces utilisées pour l'élevage. Une superficie nettement plus importante.
Almost all the Earth's surface now bears the mark of some kind of human impact, and most of that is livestock production.
Agriculture has transformed the planet like nothing else. To produce milk, we farm an area about the size of Brazil. To produce beef, we farm an area about the size of Canada, the United States, the whole of Central America, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador combined. To produce eggs, we farm an area the size of Sweden. To produce aquaculture feed, an area about the size of the UK. A plant-based diet would reduce the amount of land required to produce our food by 3.1 billion hectares. That's an area the size of the entire African continent.
L'Amazonie est la plus grande forêt tropicale du monde. Une vaste étendue luxuriante qui est inexorablement remplacée. On pourrait croire qu'une grande partie du soja est consacrée à notre alimentation. En réalité, moins de 6% du soja cultivé dans le monde est destiné aux humains. La grande majorité sert à nourrir les animaux d'élevage. Ce soja est exporté dans le monde entier pour alimenter les milliards de volailles, de poissons d'élevage, de porcs et de bovins qui finissent dans nos assiettes. La forêt est non seulement un précieux réservoir de faune sauvage et de plantes, mais elle régule aussi notre climat. Chaque jour, elle absorbe le dioxyde de carbone pour rejeter dans l'atmosphère l'oxygène que nous respirons. Chaque année, ce sont plus de 7 millions d'hectares de forêt qui sont perdus, ce qui correspond à peu près à la superficie du Panama. Près de la moitié des vieilles forêts tropicales de notre planète auraient déjà été détruites. Et selon les scientifiques, il ne restera plus que 10% de ces forêts d'ici 2030, si aucune mesure forte n'est prise à l'échelle mondiale pour les préserver.
One of the most precious things we have in the world is our rainforests. The rainforests are literally being chewed away by farmers who know they can make money by cutting another acre and then another acre and then another acre for meat.
Aí nosso avô, naquele tempo, cacique, então já falou, olha, você vai sofrer muito, porque o branco, ruralismo.
Chaque année, des tribus indigènes de la forêt amazonienne voient leur village réduit en cendres. Ils sont expulsés de force de leurs terres et certains sont tués par les milices à la solde des agriculteurs, prêts à tout pour étendre toujours plus leurs champs, destinés à l'alimentation du bétail. L'une des tribus les plus touchées est celle des Guarani Kaiowá, dans l'état du Mato Grosso.
Para nós indígenas, antigamente as florestas que é a nossa casa. Quem começou a destruir a nossa aldeia é através da agropecuária. Então derrubaram as nossas matas, destruindo os animais, os rios.
Eu estou falando, agora vai plantar soja, aí depois vai passar veneno, né? Tudo coisa. Vai passar o adubo também, vai cair tudo no rio. E nós revoltando nos terras para sustentar a nossa família.
So there was actually a report that came out in 2018, and they found that the world's top 5 livestock corporations now release more annual greenhouse gas emissions than ExxonMobil, Shell, and BP. It is crazy when you think about it, because the EU is spending £24 billion of taxpayers' money on livestock farming each year. And this is at a time when we are facing an ecological collapse and we drastically need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's no surprise that people are asking a lot of questions now about the fact that there seem to be some serious conflicts of interest going on here.
There's some very heavy lobbying going on of government, and I think that happens throughout the world. And it's just a historic thing that needs to be, I think, rebalanced.
As I've mentioned to you over the phone, I've worked with a number of large livestock companies around the world. So the way it works is that a representative from pays us usually up to €500,000. We then target the relevant politicians from different governments around the world, and motions are made to pass legislation in favour of the company's business strategies. For environmental policy, we can be very persuasive in order to abolish or heavily relax environmental regulations in government, so our clients have more freedom in their work. The other day we managed to kill proposed legislation that would have had a huge impact on the industry based on a report from the UN FAO. You know, the industry is just concerned with growth, but the environmental data that's coming out now, it's really making that difficult for them.
Today, democracy does not always function as well as it should because of the huge influence that agribusiness corporations and livestock producers in particular exercise on decision-making.
A former director of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, Dr. Samuel Jutzi, warned as far back as 2010 that interventions by agribusiness lobbyists were blocking reforms that would offer better standards for human health and preserving the environment. Big animal agribusiness corporations and food producers' influence over political decisions about the regulation of their industry has long been a concern for campaigners who see the narrow interests of the industry taking widespread control.
If we have any doubt about how powerful this influence is, we can recall that, for example, when the Advisory Committee on Dietary Guidelines in the US made recommendations to the US government as to how dietary guidelines should be shaped, they were blocked by this very powerful lobby of agribusiness interests.
En 2013, la FAO, l'Agence des Nations Unies pour l'alimentation et l'agriculture, publiait un rapport intitulé « Lutter contre le changement climatique à travers l'élevage ». On y apprend que le secteur de l'élevage émet plus de gaz à effet de serre que les émissions directes de tout le secteur des transports. Mais selon de nombreux scientifiques, ce constat de la FAO est largement sous-évalué. La situation serait en réalité bien pire.
There are close ties between the research organisations and government policy and industry. It's very pervasive because livestock industries depend on government policies that support them.
The FAO report was prepared within the FAO by specialists of agriculture and livestock production, not by specialists of the environmental issues associated with agricultural production. I believe that a more serious concern, of course, is that the International Meat Association was involved in preparing the report, which does raise the question of the independence with which the study was prepared.
Government policy in that regard is not for the benefit of the land, it's for the benefit of the industry.
Le rapport de la FAO a été réalisé en partenariat avec des ONG, mais aussi avec d'autres organisations, comme la Fédération européenne des fabricants d'aliments composés pour animaux, la Fédération internationale du lait, l'Office international de la viande, la Commission internationale des œufs et le Conseil international de la volaille. Dans un secteur qui pèse plusieurs centaines de milliards de dollars, ces institutions ne sont-elles pas justement celles qui ont le plus à perdre avec la publication d'un tel rapport scientifique ? La docteure Sylvia Earle est sans doute l'une des meilleures spécialistes des océans. Elle fut la première femme nommée directrice scientifique de l'Agence d'observation océanique et atmosphérique des États-Unis. Elle a aussi établi plusieurs records de plongée au cours de sa carrière.
When I was a child, the idea of a dead zone in the ocean was not even in our vocabulary. But in the 20th century, as agriculture began to greatly expand, the areas around the coast began to show signs of wear and tear. The first, most notorious spotlight area, I think, was off the Gulf of Mexico. And it has simply grown over the years, an annual phenomenon that is coincident with the application of massive amounts of fertilizer.
Les millions de kilomètres carrés consacrés à la culture d'aliments pour animaux sont aspergés massivement d'engrais azotés. Cet azote s'écoule des champs jusqu'aux rivières et finit par se retrouver dans les océans. L'eau riche en azote stimule la prolifération massive d'algues. Cela crée une efflorescence parfois si étendue qu'elle est visible depuis l'espace. Les algues privent l'eau d'oxygène, tuant la vie marine environnante. Ces zones mortes s'élargissent à mesure que la demande mondiale de viande augmente.
There are hundreds of dead zones that have developed all around the coastlines of the world. And Okay, people say, that's too bad for the fish. So sorry, fish. But we need to understand that what we do to the ocean, we're doing to ourselves. I want others to see, and to see for themselves. This is all we've got, this little blue miracle.
Certains pensent qu'abandonner la viande pour le poisson pourrait avoir un effet bénéfique sur la planète. Mais ce n'est pas le cas. Si l'océan meurt, alors nous, humains, mourrons probablement aussi. Car c'est l'océan qui produit la majeure partie de l'oxygène que nous respirons. Selon la revue scientifique Nature, 90% des grands poissons ont disparu de l'océan depuis les années 50. Une autre étude portant sur les stocks de poissons, également publiée dans Nature, indique que si nous continuons à pêcher à un rythme aussi élevé, tout le secteur de la pêche s'effondrera d'ici 30 ans. Pour l'IPBES, la plateforme intergouvernementale sur la biodiversité, la pêche est la première cause de l'extinction de la vie marine. Notre appétit pour le poisson est littéralement en train de vider les océans.
Today we have agreed on fishing opportunities for European fishermen worth more than 5 billion euros and benefiting more than 50,000 fishermen. The catches agreed today will continue to make the European fishing industry highly profitable also in 2019.
La Norvège, un pays magnifique, au paysage à couper le souffle. Mais il cache aussi des secrets plus sombres. La Norvège est l'un des plus gros exportateurs de poissons d'élevage au monde. Une industrie qui représente des milliards d'euros pour l'économie du pays. Alors qu'une grande partie des stocks de poissons sauvages de l'océan s'est effondrée, le secteur agroalimentaire se tourne vers l'aquaculture pour élever des poissons dans un environnement contrôlé. La Norvège produit plus de saumon et de cabillaud d'élevage que tous les autres pays du monde. Plus de la moitié du poisson que nous mangeons provient désormais de fermes piscicoles artificielles. Des milliers de poissons sont maintenus dans de petites cages. La promiscuité favorise la propagation de maladies et de poux de mer, ce qui est devenu un problème majeur pour l'industrie. Alors des pesticides, des désinfectants et des antibiotiques sont utilisés à grande échelle pour maintenir les poissons en vie assez longtemps pour être vendus. Pour débarrasser les poissons de leurs parasites, on utilise des bateaux de pompage spéciaux qui vont aspirer les poissons. À mesure qu'ils traversent la machine, les poissons sont soit chauffés à haute température, soit baignés dans une solution chimique qui élimine la plupart des poux. Ils sont ensuite rejetés dans leur cage. Les poissons sont baignés dans des produits tels que le peroxyde d'hydrogène ou l'azamétiphos pour tuer les parasites et les maladies. On leur donne de la nourriture contenant notamment du téflubenzurone, du benzoate d'imamectine et du diflubenzurone, qui sont toxiques. Les chercheurs ont constaté que des traces de ces produits chimiques sont détectées dans l'organisme des poissons et au final, dans nos assiettes. Le risque existe pour la plupart des poissons d'élevage du monde. Taryn Bishop est une militante écologiste. Elle retrouve les membres des Green Warriors, une association de défense de l'environnement basée à Bergen, en Norvège. Les Green Warriors enquêtent depuis des années sur les conséquences dévastatrices de la pisciculture sur l'écosystème local. Ce jour-là, ils emmènent Taryn découvrir la face immergée des fermes piscicoles. Un petit sous-marin leur permet d'inspecter l'état des fonds marins, sous les cages. Ils y trouvent une épaisse couche de boue, composée de déchets de poissons, de bactéries et d'aliments non consommés. La boue est aussi remplie de pesticides ajoutés à la nourriture des poissons. Et selon de récentes études, ces quantités massives de produits phytosanitaires provenant des fermes piscicoles à travers le monde contaminent les écosystèmes marins et ont un effet dévastateur sur la biodiversité. Les boues libèrent également de grandes quantités de méthane, un puissant gaz à effet de serre. Des chercheurs de l'université d'Oxford ont découvert que certains types d'aquaculture libèrent plus de méthane que la production de viande bovine. Liv Holmefjord est à la tête de la direction norvégienne de la pêche. Nous apprenons lors de notre séjour qu'en plus d'être chargée de réglementer l'industrie piscicole du pays, elle possède également des actions dans l'une des plus grandes entreprises d'élevage de poissons de Norvège. Un conflit d'intérêts majeur pour les associations de défense de l'environnement. Liv Holmefjord a accepté de répondre aux questions de Taryn sur la situation des fermes piscicoles en Norvège.
Well, fish farming is quite a new industry in Norway. It started back in the 1960s with some local entrepreneurs starting with hobby, and it's grown until it's a billion euro industry today. And seafood is the second largest export industry in Norway, and fish farming accounts for 2/3 of the export value of seafood.
So recently, we found out that you also have shares in one of the largest fish farm companies in Norway. Do you not feel that that's a conflict of interest?
Of course, there could be a conflict of interest, but this is a fact that's been known since before I got this position, and I've been open about it. I'm not involved in the business from day to day or at any. So it's, and if there's, we have, and I have. Sorry, I have to. Do you have to start over again? Hva heter det for noe da? So all the decisions that I made will either be for the whole industry, not especially for this fish farm, or it's only an advice to the politicians, and the politicians are setting the limits and the actual regulations. So if there's an actual case handling regarding this company, then I will step aside.
When on a few jobs I was working here over the years as a diver, we used to be around the fish farms cleaning the dead, deceased fish from the nets and fixing the nets, etc. after storms.
And on occasion, we'd seen some of the boats coming in to clean the lice off them. It's quite a lot of dead fish, you know, diseased or they've died, but it's a lot of pink mush, you know, not healthy look. Having seen what I've seen and worked on the various sites round about where I've been in Scotland, I wouldn't eat farmed salmon. No, I would have. Pretty rank.
Salmon is marketed as healthy. It's also marketed in a very devious way, deceptive way, that they think it's a wild product. So it's a fake product, it's a fatty product, it's contaminated, it's marketed as healthy, but it's not. So salmon, if you see salmon, alarm bells should start ringing.
It's pretty grim when you dive down to the bottom of the cages because, you know, we always see the bottom full of dead fish. And it's basically because many of these fish are so diseased, so parasite-ridden and laden with chemicals that they become sick and they live out their sad, short lives basically looking like zombies. You know, you don't see this when you go to the restaurant or the supermarket, but this is basically what a lot of the fish actually look like before it ends up on our plates. So tonight, Don wanted to show us how much of the farmed fish actually dies because of the very unnatural and unsanitary ways that they are kept. And they have rows of very large metal containers that they are constantly filling up with the dead fish. And I have to say that the smell as we get closer is actually pretty disgusting.
So this is the sordid side of salmon farming in Scotland. This is the dirty secrets the industry don't want you to see. This is disease-ridden farmed salmon. It's 15 to 20% fat. That's where the contaminants, the cancer-causing contaminants, PCBs, dioxins, and the artificial colorings are. So this is something to be avoided at all costs. This is the salmon farm just here. We got freedom information, data from the Scottish Environment Protection Agency showing the use of over 50 tons of formaldehyde, not just at this site but other sites across Scotland. Is formaldehyde may cause cancer, suspected of causing genetic defects, toxic if swallowed, may cause respiratory irritation, causes damage to organs. Do not breathe.
One of the fish farm workers told us that the workers come down to the farm early in the morning, spraying the chemicals into the fish cages. So they're obviously spraying something down there in the water. The guy who gave us the tip-off said that toxic chemicals are widely used across Scotland, including formaldehyde and also hydrogen peroxide. And these are supposed to treat the diseases and lice problems which are both rampant across the fish farms. You know, these are not chemicals that you want in your body. Whatever he's spraying must be pretty powerful if he needs to wear a full protective chemical suit and a face mask.
Alors que les déchets de 7 milliards d'humains s'accumulent dans les océans et que les poissons d'élevage sont saturés de produits chimiques, manger du poisson n'a jamais été aussi nocif.
You know, our oceans have become humanity's sewers. Everything eventually flows into the sea. So if you had a, time machine that could go back before the Industrial Revolution, it's a different story. But now, the highest levels of many of these persistent organic pollutants, we're talking about, DDT and PCBs and dioxins, the highest levels in our food supply are found in the aquatic food chain. Fish are not the safest choice anymore.
So Tony, it's great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Thanks for coming.
Not at all. Thank you. A pleasure being here. So I wanted to ask you if you could share with us what exactly it was you began to feel when you realized something was going wrong.
I was exhausted more than usual, and then I was losing short-term memory, and that scared the hell out of me. And then I tore my rotator cuffs in a really intense snowboarding accident. And the doctor said, "Do you want to do your metals test?" And I said, I got my amalgams out 25 years ago. He goes, "There's so many metals in the environment, you should do it." So I did. I get a phone call a week later, and I said to my assistant, "Just have him send the report." And he said, "No, it's an emergency. He has to speak to you." And I was like, "No one wants to hear that." And so I called him up, and he said, "Tony, I showed your blood tests. You have extreme mercury poisoning. On a 0 to 5 scale, which is what we measure, 5 being toxic, you're 123. The doctor said, how long has this man been in the hospital?" And I just got off stage. So I said, "I can't understand this." So I went out, and they thought, maybe someone was trying to poison me because the number was so high. And I was very disciplined. I was a vegan for 12 years, and then I just went salad fish. And they brought the medical group out here, and they looked at it, and I found this man named Dr. Shade, who's the only guy who has an ideation process where you can see where the mercury came from, and it was fish. It's been 3 years, and I had some severe moments. It burned a hole in my esophagus, and I literally collapsed. I lost a third of my blood supply. I could have died. I lost half my hemoglobin.
People begin to lose their hair, their memory. They lose their memories, as you were doing, as you noticed. But they can also have headaches. They can complain of fatigue. They can also have depression. What we're seeing now is with the toxic environmental exposure, and especially with the methyl mercury in fish, is that everyone has got to be careful because the levels are going up.
Udo, tell me, because your specialty is in this, how do you get the fish oils that we all need for the brain and for the body if we can't have fish? What do you suggest?
Well, we used to get them from fish oils.
Yes.
But we can actually get them from vegetables. Flax is the richest source of omega-3 that everybody thinks should come from fish oil. If you get enough of that as starting material, your body will make what the fish oils make, and it'll be clean.
Many people take fish oils or have fish for the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. And you have to ask yourself the question, well, where do the fish get them from? And it turns out they get them from the algae in the ocean. They get them from plant food. So if you want the purest form of the long-chain, ready-made omega-3 fatty acids, the best way of doing that is simply to take an algae supplement, because then you've got the purest form of it and you don't have the extra risks of having the toxins and the heavy metals and the saturated fat and the cholesterol that you would get from eating a fish.
Les chercheurs de l'Institut d'océanographie Scripps à San Diego ont mené une grande étude sur les produits polluants retrouvés dans les poissons. Ils ont identifié des contaminants toxiques dans les poissons de tous les océans.
Nobody would go to the nearest body of water and put in like a cup and drink the water. You're basically getting the concentrated toxins if we're eating fish.
Nos océans sont aussi remplis de plastique. Face à l'immensité de la surface océanique, c'est un défi pour les scientifiques de connaître avec précision l'origine de ces particules. Le vortex de déchets du Pacifique Nord, aussi appelé 7e continent, s'étend sur environ 1,6 million de kilomètres carrés. Il permet de mieux comprendre le problème grandissant posé par ces microparticules. L'organisation Ocean Cleanup étudie cette mer de déchets depuis de nombreuses années. Les scientifiques ont été surpris d'apprendre qu'une grande partie du plastique ne provient pas de vieilles pailles ou de bouteilles d'eau usagées, mais de débris issus de l'industrie de la pêche, décomposés par la mer en milliards de petits morceaux. Selon une étude récemment publiée dans la revue Nature, près de la moitié du plastique dans le Pacifique est composé de matériel de pêche abandonné, dont des filets. De nombreux scientifiques s'accordent à dire que l'une des solutions à ce problème serait que chaque individu réduise sa consommation de poissons et passe à une alimentation végétale, à base de plantes.
At least half of the plastic in the sea today comes from discarded or lost fishing gear. Because all those nets, all those lines, all that stuff, it's just become a plasticized ocean. But we have a chance. We have a chance right now to change our eating habits.
There's an estimate that there's over 5 trillion tons of plastic currently floating in the ocean. It's absolutely everywhere. Everywhere we look, we found microplastics, whether it's at the polar regions, in remote islands. Also, if we're looking on the surface or the seabed, and everywhere in between, we find microplastics. We've also found microplastics in just about every animal group that we've looked in. We've been sampling for microplastics for quite a while now, and we found that there's 27 times more bits of plastic than there are fish larvae.
Le microplancton est présent dans tous les océans. Il se nourrit en filtrant l'eau. Lorsque les chercheurs ajoutent des microplastiques dans l'environnement du plancton, ils sont systématiquement ingérés. Le plancton est incapable de détecter la présence de produits toxiques. Alors il consomme les microparticules de plastique sans discernement. Les substances chimiques vont s'accumuler dans les organes de ces petites créatures marines. Le plancton contaminé est ensuite mangé par de plus gros poissons. Et selon les scientifiques, ces produits chimiques se retrouvent donc dans la chair de nombreux poissons que nous mangeons. Une étude de l'université de Plymouth a révélé que plus d'un tiers des poissons testés contenaient des microplastiques. En consommant ces poissons contaminés, nous ingérons les mêmes substances toxiques, qui, selon les chercheurs, finissent aussi par s'accumuler dans nos organismes.
Our scientists tell us we're now in the 6th extinction event of life on this Earth. It doesn't even make the headlines. No one even knows about it.
Saya ke semua polo puni mati kana ati mo koni mati kana. Nani ke yaro siapa ni te. Sia hayu temene kati semani. Tony na waku ke ban. Thara ate nekuni. Saya tidak di saya metani saya nuru ada yang nuru ni te. Saya potolnya nuru. Saya ati muko. Ayu romera. Saya na bekas na henikan haka. Ate di tali haba. Nekuni saya kepu pasti juga. Saya lah yang nuru waikuna. Ni nane nuru kapan? Tahu apa ni ti? Tuero ati muko. Nyalo balik apa? Naik ke penikere. Terus ni kalau ni nyasa dia ni. Tahu apa ni kalau ni? Na, waikna, oti peti apa ni?
We've had 5 mass extinction events on this planet in 450 million years. Let me be clear on this. The last time we had an extinction event of this magnitude was 65 million years ago.
It's incredibly sad to realize just how many species, both in the oceans and on land, that we're losing at the moment. And It's up to all of us to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future.
Today, over 26,000 species are currently threatened with extinction, and the most important driver of that is our use of land for agriculture.
Over time, livestock have been a major driver of biodiversity loss.
Some have predicted that by 2045, the species loss will be so great that we won't recover. The Earth will suffer ecological collapse. And the biggest thing you and I can do is change our diet.
Un anéantissement biologique. C'est ainsi que certains chercheurs nomment la crise actuelle. Une publication scientifique de l'Université internationale de Floride affirme que l'élevage est la cause principale de la perte de biodiversité. Selon une étude publiée dans la revue Science, si l'ensemble de la population mondiale passait à un régime exclusivement végétal, nous libérerions plus de 75% des terres arables de la planète, et une grande partie des forêts abattues pour l'élevage pourraient être restaurées. De nombreuses initiatives pour la reforestation se développent à travers le monde, comme Ecosia. Ce moteur de recherche en ligne, similaire à Google, utilise les revenus tirés de la publicité pour financer la plantation d'arbres par les communautés locales. Mauricio est l'un des principaux forestiers d'Ecosia. Il travaille dur pour reboiser la forêt tropicale au Brésil.
Plantei minha primeira árvore, eu tinha 5 anos de idade. Eu nem imaginava que 20 anos depois, esse esforço tão pequeno teria virado uma das iniciativas que mais plantou árvores na história do Brasil. Foram mais de 2,5 milhões de árvores, 2.000 hectares plantados, muitas áreas preservadas pela ação de combate a incêndios florestais.
Les arbres insufflent la vie dans notre monde. Lorsque nous plantons un arbre, nous semons les graines de notre avenir sur cette planète. Une étude approfondie, validée par une équipe internationale de chercheurs, a récemment été menée sur l'impact environnemental de notre alimentation. Le docteur Marco Springman, de l'université d'Oxford en Angleterre, a dirigé les recherches. Il conclut que pour avoir une chance de limiter le réchauffement climatique sous le seuil des 2 degrés, comme prévu dans l'accord de Paris sur le climat, les pays développés doivent réduire radicalement leur consommation de viande, d'environ 80%.
Policymakers have been very reluctant to address the livestock issue. It's entirely out of keeping with the urgency of the crisis that we're facing.
Hi, Otto Brockway for Brockstar Films. This is a question for Commissioner Hogan. The scientists at Oxford University have been very clear that livestock farming has a far greater impact than plant-based farming. With this in mind, would it not be common sense to reduce the billions in subsidy payments to livestock farming in Europe and offer them to plant-based farming instead as an incentive to a much more sustainable food system?
We have made our proposals based on protecting the farmers because they are, unlike you and I, they're out in all sorts of weathers and in all sorts of market risks. And you and I may not know anything about that because this is their lives. They're producing high quality food for us all so that we can have this particular good quality products available to us at all times. Sometimes under local conditions like organic, more times it's conventional farming. So we provide financial support at the moment for that. And it's a public good that's not always recognised. But the movement of our policy is in the direction of our farmers being centrally involved in providing more public goods. And if you want to do anything in life, you have to pay people. Sometimes I understand that there's a moral obligation and there's people of principle. But most of the time, 99% of the time, they have to get paid. So as professionals that we're expecting to provide good quality food and do more on public goods, we pay our farmers. This is a decision that we make at political level.
Livestock emit methane and nitrous oxide. Now, most people, when they think of climate change, they think of CO2, carbon dioxide, which is a very potent global warming gas. But methane is 25 times more potent per molecule when it's released than CO2. And nitrous oxide is 298 times more potent per molecule than CO2. These are very powerful global warming gases.
So today we have a very special camera called a hyperspectral imaging camera, and it basically enables us to be able to see gases that would be otherwise invisible to the naked eye. And today we're looking at methane gas. Methane is a gas that is being produced by cows when they belch.
Le méthane est, directement et indirectement, à l'origine d'un tiers du réchauffement climatique depuis le milieu du XVIIIe siècle. Le bétail est la plus grande source de méthane que nous pouvons contrôler. En réduisant fortement les émissions de méthane, il est possible de ralentir le réchauffement de la planète, ce qui en fait le moyen à notre disposition le plus efficace, à court terme.
Whoa, look at that. Wow.
Pour bien comprendre le pouvoir de réchauffement des différents gaz dans l'atmosphère, nous réalisons une expérience. 4 statues de glace, en forme de terre, sont disposées sous des cloches hermétiques. L'intérieur des cloches représente l'atmosphère qui entoure la planète. On place au-dessus un radiateur infrarouge qui chauffe les 4 cloches à la même température, et chacune est remplie d'un gaz différent. Dans la première se trouve de l'air normal, celui que nous respirons. La deuxième cloche est remplie de CO2, du dioxyde de carbone, le célèbre gaz à effet de serre. Dans la troisième cloche, on met du méthane, un gaz associé à l'élevage. La quatrième cloche est remplie de protoxyde d'azote, également associé à l'élevage. Au fil du temps, dans la cloche remplie de CO2, la statue de glace commence à fondre légèrement par rapport à celle placée dans l'air normal. Dans le même laps de temps, on remarque une fonte plus importante dans les cloches 3 et 4, car la température à l'intérieur augmente fortement comparée aux 2 premières cloches. « 16 heures plus tard, les résultats sont encore plus frappants. On constate clairement que le méthane et le protoxyde d'azote, les principaux gaz issus de l'élevage, sont de puissants accélérateurs du réchauffement. Sur les quelques 70 milliards d'animaux élevés chaque année dans le monde pour la consommation humaine, près de 90% sont des volailles. Et la demande est à la hausse, ce qui commence à poser problème. Bien que la viande blanche ait un impact environnemental plus faible que la viande rouge, plus de 90% des poulets dans le monde sont désormais élevés de manière intensive, ce qui a des effets dévastateurs sur notre planète. Si on compare à calories équivalentes, la volaille nuit moins à l'environnement que les bovins. Mais si on compare avec des protéines végétales, comme les pois chiches par exemple, l'élevage intensif de poulets contribue par calorie 40 fois plus au réchauffement climatique et nécessite 50 fois plus d'eau.
We know that if we would shift from ruminant meats to other meats, then we probably would reduce our footprint just from that particular product by about a factor of 10, which is quite a bit. But if you compare that with how much you would reduce your footprint if you went to plant-based products, that is about a factor of 100. And that's the reason why shifting towards more plant-based diets has such a big impact, because we're really talking about different scales here.
Certains pensent que la viande issue de l'agriculture biologique a moins d'impact sur le climat. Mais selon des chercheurs de l'université d'Oxford, il n'y a pas de différence significative entre les viandes bio et conventionnelles en matière d'émissions de gaz à effet de serre.
So in our data, we didn't find big differences between organic and conventional across multiple indicators. What we did find is that no matter how you produce animal products, even the lowest impact forms of production still create higher emissions and use more land than typical vegetable proteins. So that's saying something really important. That's saying that even if you go into the shops and try and purchase sustainable meat or dairy, it's always going to be better to purchase vegetable proteins instead.
Chaque année, Le gouvernement américain accorde 20 millions de dollars de subventions à l'agriculture maraîchère, quand la filière de l'élevage reçoit, elle, 38 milliards de dollars. On estime aujourd'hui que le coût annuel pour le contribuable américain des maladies liées à la consommation de viande et de produits laitiers s'élève à environ 314 milliards de dollars.
And when you cram, tens of thousands of animals in these cramped, filthy, unhygienic conditions, basically live atop their feces, it's just like a breeding ground. Animal to human diseases that arise because of the way we're now treating animals, whether it's these live animal markets in East Asia, whether it's the bushmeat trade. And the concern is that with enough spins at genetic roulette on these swine factory farms, these chicken factory farms, we're gonna, end up with one of these viruses that's not only deadly to chickens, but can jump and transmit human to human and cause the next human pandemic.
The risk of large-scale factory farmings increases the risk that or the likelihood that we might have a pandemic, particularly of influenza in the future.
This pandemic has been very severe, but this is not necessarily the big one.
La grippe H1N1, qui a tué plus de 500 000 personnes, trouverait son origine dans l'élevage de porcs. Le sida et le virus Ebola pourraient provenir de la consommation d'animaux sauvages, tandis que le MERS vient des chameaux, de leur lait ou de leur viande. Le SRAS se serait propagé à partir des marchés d'animaux vivants, tout comme la récente pandémie de Covid-19. La grippe aviaire, elle, proviendrait des élevages de poulets, et encore une fois, des marchés d'animaux vivants. Et le virus de la rougeole serait issu d'élevage de vaches.
People know now what a global pandemic feels like. They've seen the effects. They will be feeling the effects for many years to come. And this is a chance, I think, an opportunity to point out that this particular route of infection is a very concerning one.
Selon l'Organisation mondiale de la santé, l'ère post-antibiotique est proche. Une simple éraflure sur le bras pourrait alors nous être fatale. Nos antibiotiques deviennent inefficaces en raison de leur surconsommation, pas seulement par les humains, mais aussi parce qu'ils sont administrés chaque jour à des milliards d'animaux d'élevage.
So having been a butcher for 6 years, one thing I know is that if people knew what happened in the production of their food, they wouldn't eat meat. So one of the things that we would hit every day was pus nodules, tumors, cysts. It was something that we would hit on a daily basis. Having worked in a supermarket chain, I saw this firsthand every single day. So here's one that's running along the shoulder blade. Oh. Yeah. That is what I remember in the butchery. It comes out like a thick toothpaste. I remember that every single day.
That's interesting to hear you had that experience all the way over there, because in the UK, exactly the same.
Yeah.
We would see that on a daily basis. But those people who say it's not my butcher does this, they need to open their eyes, because if their butcher's being honest with them, we know. Yeah. We both know. And any honest butcher's going to admit it. They're not going to want to tell the public because it's going to affect their business. Yeah. But it is a fact.
And me working in multiple butcheries, I saw these common trends across the board. So I know that it wasn't just isolated to the one that I was working in. It was across the board for me.
People need to reconnect with what they're eating, and the whole process that we're talking about here of how that food gets to them is hidden from them, and it's hidden for a reason. Because if they saw it, it would most definitely make them want to think harder about what they're eating.
Alors que nos océans et notre atmosphère se réchauffent, le cycle de l'eau change aussi.
Climate change changes the water cycles of the planet. The heat that's being generated is forcing the precipitation into the clouds, so we're getting more concentrated precipitation in our clouds and more dramatic, extreme, and unpredictable water events all over the world.
Dans le Pacifique, dans les zones reculées du nord de l'île de Taïwan, au milieu des montagnes, vit le peuple Atayal. Taïwan est habitué aux conditions météorologiques extrêmes, mais ces dernières années, la force et la fréquence des typhons ont augmenté. Cela a eu un effet dévastateur sur le peuple Atayal et son mode de vie. Pendant qu'une partie de la planète fait face à des inondations extrêmes, ailleurs, c'est l'inverse qui se produit. Des sécheresses dramatiques touchent des régions entières, détruisant les récoltes et rendant de plus en plus difficile l'irrigation des champs pour des millions d'agriculteurs.
I'm definitely worried about the future of our farm. I think we're seeing, many more swings in climate than we've seen in the past. But we want to use all the land that we have to grow food, but we haven't been able to just because of the shortages of water. It'll have an impact on food supply and prices and availability. And so estimates now are between 500,000 to over 1 million acres of farmland that'll come out of production in California.
Almeria, dans le sud de l'Espagne, abrite 31 000 hectares de fermes maraîchères sous serre. La province produit la moitié des fruits et légumes frais d'Europe. C'est donc un maillon essentiel de la chaîne d'approvisionnement alimentaire du continent. Ce qui inquiète, c'est que depuis 20 ans, l'Espagne est en proie à une sécheresse qui, selon les scientifiques, est étroitement liée au dérèglement climatique.
In terms of water, the truth is that the drought in Spain has become a complete catastrophe. Our harvests are decreasing in massive quantities. Last year, in the area we are now, there was almost no harvest. People don't realize the food system is collapsing.
En raison du dérèglement du climat, la sécheresse qui sévit en Afrique s'est aggravée. Les rivières et les lacs, qui fournissent de l'eau potable à des millions de personnes, commencent à s'assécher. De nouveaux conflits éclatent pour l'accès à ces ressources qui s'amenuisent, provoquant un exode massif de personnes qui cherchent refuge plus au nord. Les réfugiés climatiques sont prêts à tout risquer pour rejoindre avec leurs familles les côtes européennes, qu'ils considèrent plus sûres. Confrontée à cette migration de masse, l'Espagne a construit à Melilla un mur gigantesque qui longe sa frontière sud. Des milliers de réfugiés tentent de franchir les clôtures, surpassant la police espagnole. Alors que les prévisions indiquent une augmentation du nombre de réfugiés climatiques, le monde doit mieux se préparer à gérer la situation.
Osbal, Andral, Osgwy Herbyd, Mogolpwrn.
Mongolie, rien ne semble arrêter l'avancée inexorable du désert de Gobi, qui progresse toujours plus loin, asséchant sur son passage de nombreux lacs, essentiels aux animaux et aux hommes. Si les étendues d'eau continuent de disparaître, les gens seront contraints de quitter leurs terres pour des contrées lointaines et inconnues.
Уулс тэгшхэн сайхан байсан цаг. Саяхан санагдах. Өгшчүүл хангаа дэлхийн нэг л өөр болоод байна гэцгээж байна. Монголчууд байгаль дэлхийдээ дасан зогсож амьдэрсаар ирсэн. Гэхдээ байгаль орчин арай л дэндүү огцом хөвсөж байна уу та гэж. Энэ дэлхий дээр ам өрсөж үлдэхийн тулд их л төвчээртэй хатуужилтай байх хэрэгтэй болох нь дээ.
A lot of people talk about how much fresh water we use for hydrofracking. 700 billion gallons globally is wasted on fracking. So 700 billion gallons. Sounds like a lot, but animal agriculture, the production of animals that we use for meat around the globe, uses 70 trillion gallons of fresh water a year. Hundreds of thousands of times as much as fracking. And we give the cows and the chickens the good stuff, right? They don't get the Flint, Michigan, lead-tainted condoms floating in it water. They get the top shelf stuff because we don't want to screw up our sausage links. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, oh, here's the part. I'm a vegetarian and pigs are people too, meh. But no, let's ignore how the animals are treated in our factory torture farming. Let's pretend they're treated amazing for just a minute. It's like a celebrity backstage at the Oscars. They're just being fawned over and they get swag bags with free Apple Watches. Point is, you should still be upset about this because animal agriculture is killing us. And corporate media is fantastically pathetic on this topic. They never mention meat production. They never mention that a quarter pounder takes 660 gallons of fresh water to create. That's the equivalent of showering for 2 months.
So one usually underestimated impact of livestock production is the huge amounts of fresh water required for that production to be maintained and to be increased.
The problem is that in many places water is being used much faster than the natural renewal rates. Overall, in the world, 1.8 billion people are living in areas with severe water scarcity. The livestock sector is the single biggest water user in the world. 1/3 of the water use in the world is being used for producing animal products, meat and dairy. And it's not because those animals drink so much, it's really because there's a lot of water required to make the feed for the animals.
If we want enough fresh water for future generations, water alone dictates that we must change our diet away from meat and dairy.
À travers le monde, de plus en plus de personnes réduisent leur consommation de viande ou la bannissent complètement de leur alimentation. En 2021, 580 000 personnes au Royaume-Uni ont participé au Veganuary, qui consiste à ne pas manger de produits animaux pendant 1 mois. Et plus de 4 millions de Britanniques disent aujourd'hui être véganes. Au Canada, on estime que 10% de la population est maintenant végétalienne ou végétarienne. Aux États-Unis, des plats 100% végétaux sont proposés dans la moitié des restaurants. Et le nombre de personnes adoptant un mode de vie vegan a augmenté de 600% en 3 ans.
A few years ago, it was quite a challenge to get hold of good vegan food, but today we're pretty much spoiled for choice, and there are vegan options everywhere.
Thanks. It tastes like a normal hot dog. Is it a normal hot dog? Like, as in, like, or is this like plant-based or something?
So it is actually plant-based, yeah. So everything.
It's really nice. I prefer it because I don't really eat meat that much, so this is good.
Okay.
Well, I like meat and it tastes good.
Yeah.
For not being meat.
Would you be happy with that?
Yeah, I'd be stoked. I love meat too much.
So I feel like if I went plant-based, I'd miss it. But if this like stuff tastes the same, yeah, I'd be very happy with this.
Nice messy fingers.
It is, yeah. Sounds good burger. Thank you.
Would it interest you to know that that's completely plant-based?
And I wouldn't know. So that I would definitely, wow, that's a winner. Yeah, I'm amazed.
If burgers always tasted like that, would you be happy to just not eat a beef burger
Yeah,
again?
no, I got good veggie, yeah.
Yeah? I'd like you to tell me which one of these nuggets is plant-based and which one is real meat.
Okay.
It's very hard to say which one is.
They taste exactly the same, honestly.
These are not the chicken.
No.
That's interesting.
Which one of this is animal meat and which one of this is plant-based? Meat or not meat? You're not sure? You're not sure?
You're not, yeah, I'm not sure.
Meat. You? Yes. Are wrong. Okay. Okay.
But you think the second one was chicken? Yeah. The second one was actually plant-based.
No way.
Yeah, and the first one was chicken. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't. I couldn't have guessed that. I definitely thought the first one. Yeah, definitely.
It seems that changing what we eat to a more sustainable diet can also coincidentally be very beneficial to our health. There is a growing understanding that we can actually prevent, and in many cases even reverse, some of our most common diseases, all through a shift towards a whole food vegan diet.
Humans can survive on many different kinds of diet, but many decades of research has now shown us that the best way of not just surviving but truly thriving is on a whole food plant-based diet.
A human can be healthy on a plant-based diet without any animal products. The major dietetic associations around the world, including the British Dietetic Association, have produced statements to say exactly that a diet made up of whole plant foods is healthy for humans all stages of their lives.
And not only can they be healthy, but they can restore or reclaim their health adopting a plant-based diet.
There are certain areas, certain populations around the world that have extraordinary health and longevity. For example, the largest number of centenarians, people that live over 100, these so-called blue zones.
What's really interesting about the blue zones, they actually have more centenarians than anywhere else in the world. And a centenarian is someone that lives at least 100 years. But what's really interesting about the blue zones is when people reach these advanced ages, they are still productive. So the blue zones have taught us a lot. And the bottom line is we really want to try to emulate what the people of the blue zones are doing.
Les 5 régions qui forment cette zone bleue sont Okinawa au Japon, la Sardaigne en Italie, Ikaria en Grèce, Nicoya au Costa Rica et Loma Linda en Californie.
So the question is, well, what do they all have in common?
They have a predominantly plant-based diet. They have a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, soy, lentils, chickpeas. They have a diet rich in all these nutrients, and that's one thing that they have in common.
So the EPIC study is the European Prospective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition. It followed over 500,000 individuals from 10 European countries for more than 15 years. Those in the EPIC study that were eating predominantly plant-based or eating high levels of fruits and vegetables lived longer, had lower incidence of cancer and heart disease. About 2,500 of the individuals in the EPIC Oxford only ate plant food, so they were vegan. And even though they weren't the most healthy vegans or healthy plant eaters, you could show that these plant eaters were healthier. They had a lower incidence of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer.
From everything we have discovered on this journey, it seems that moving away from animal foods to plant-based foods instead can not only give us a whole host of amazing health benefits, but also gives us a chance to be able to leave a sustainable planet for future generations to come. Perhaps the single most meaningful change that we can make as individuals is ultimately deciding what ends up each day on our plates.
We are running out of time. The world community must acknowledge that animal agriculture is the most destructive industry on our planet. We can't wait for government policies and other organizations to create a better life for ourselves. We need to stand up now and make our voices heard.
Globally, for the typical consumer, avoiding meat and dairy is probably the single biggest way to reduce your impact on Earth.
Without addressing what we eat, we simply won't make it.
This is a #1 priority. This is a next step in taking responsibility for our communities, our planet, our biosphere, our fellow species.
People say, what can I do as an individual? It feels overwhelming. Well, you can make individual choices. We all can. Our individual choices affect the collective choices. When you hear about airplanes and cars, and we're still going to use those things. But the choices we make in our diet, this agricultural business where we use animals as the primary source of protein, the one thing I think we can all do is, as individuals, is make our own individual choices, how we're going to live, how we're going to eat. Plant-based diet makes all the difference in the world. Just make some choices that are good for you, and being good for you will be good for the planet.
Cette planète est notre maison. Et ce qui s'y passe maintenant dépend de nous. L'histoire a montré que lorsque nous agissons ensemble, unis par une cause commune, nous pouvons accomplir de grandes choses. Nous avons l'opportunité de construire un monde dans lequel nous pouvons prospérer. Mais l'horloge tourne. Et le temps est compté.